Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Strengthening Families Networking webinar for September. Today we're talking about engaged communities preventing child abuse, and we're going to hear about the 90 by 30 story from Lane County, Oregon. So thank you all for joining us. I'm going to get us started here. Just to be clear about what this webinar series is, some of you join us all the time, some of you may just be joining for the first time, so I wanted to let you know that we do these webinars once a month. It's an open invitation to anyone who's using the Strengthening Families Protective Factors Framework or coordinating Strengthening Families efforts, whether that's in a particular agency, in a county or region or town, or for a state or for a national partner organization. We jointly convene these webinars between my organization, the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and our partners at the National Alliance of Children's Trust and Prevention Funds. So we will share some updates from each of our organizations to get us started today. And then each month we feature a topic or guest speaker, which we coordinate to give a wide breadth of how people are using Strengthening Families. Our goal is always for people to learn about innovative work others are doing, walk away with some ideas that they might be able to apply in their own work, or thinking about partners they might reach out to now that they've seen how they're engaged somewhere else. So it's really, we call it a networking webinar because we really do want folks to learn from each other. And if you have questions, you can type them in as we go, and then we'll get to them at the end. We always post recordings of the webinars as well as the materials, including slides and handouts, links to other resources on this Google site maintained by our partners of the Alliance. So anytime you register for one of these webinars, you do receive a follow-up email that has a link to just the recording within GoToWebinar, but also a link to this site where things are posted in a more comprehensive way with other materials and the slides. So we're doing September's webinar today, and then moving forward, our next one will be on October 10th. We're going to hear updates from Project Dulce, which is an intervention in a pediatric clinic setting to help families address protective factors during the first 6 months of the child's life. So we're going to hear about how that intervention works, how it's been replicated in 5 sites over the last couple of years, maybe 3 years, and some upcoming opportunities for further replication. So if you've been curious about Dulce, we've talked about it on this webinar before, but it has been a while. So if you want to check back in on what's going on, or if this is the first time you've heard about it, please join us October 10th. You can register at that link, and more information will be coming out in our newsletter, posted on our website, and so on. You can also mark your calendars now for the second Thursday of each month at this time, November 14th and December 12th. We've got an exciting lineup of topics for the rest of the year, and hope you will join us whenever it is relevant to your work. And I'll mention we do always record it, so if there's a topic that you're really interested in, go ahead and register for it. Then you'll get the email with the recording and a little reminder to yourself to go check it out, possibly also to review the slides and the handouts at that link I shared on the other page, which also always goes out in the announcement. Okay, so today I'll share some updates from CSSP. Martha Reeder will share some updates from the National Alliance of Children's Trust and Prevention Funds, and then we'll get to our main topic with Phyllis Barkhurst and Jeff Todal joining us from the University of Oregon. And we'll hear about their countywide initiative for child abuse prevention that builds protective factors called 90 by 30. All right, so just a couple of updates from CSSP. Many of you are familiar with Youth Thrive, which is our parallel framework of protective and promotive factors for youth, ages 12 to 26. There's a Youth Thrive survey that was recently finalized and released, and there's going to be a webinar about it next week. If you're curious about that, please check out the webinar Wednesday afternoon. You can register at this link here. Again, if you go to cssp.org, it should show up as one of our upcoming events, and you can register there. And really encourage you, whether you are in an agency that works with youth and are going to use the survey yourself, or if you just want to learn more about it so that you could recommend it to others, please do check that out. Also next week, a busy week now that we're into September and everybody's getting back into school and work mode, we've got conference season starting. So Next week is Prevent Child Abuse America's National Conference called Moving Upstream. That's in Milwaukee, September 16th to 18th. I imagine many of you will be attending it, so I wanted to let you know there's a session on Wednesday afternoon where I'll be presenting about applying Strengthening Families concepts to change practice in home visiting, early care and education, and family support settings. And Strengthening Families Alabama will be presenting about how they approach implementation of Strengthening Families in their state initiative. So that'll be a fun session, and hope to see lots of you there who are engaged in strengthening families in different ways around the country, as well as people who are just learning about it for the first time. And even if you don't come to that session, if you're at that conference, come say hi. I always like to meet the people whose names I see on our webinar list, and love to hear about how you're using Strengthening Families. So come up and say hi if you see me around at the conference. Also wanted to let you know about another conference coming up just over a year from now, October 13th through 16th, 2020. We'll be holding the second Together for Families conference. This is a partnership between CSSP and the National Family Support Network and other national partners who are all interested in family support and strengthening families. We convened this for the first time last October and had a great time doing it. We're excited for even more people to be able to participate next time. Very excited to be partnering with the City of Seattle as our host, and probably early next year we will recruit a planning committee. You'll have opportunities to submit sessions you'd like to present. We really want to engage the network in this, so keep an eye on that. Mark your calendar now to save the date. And with that, I'd like to hand off to Martha to share some updates from the Alliance.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Martha Reeder, and thanks, Kaylin. I have, you can go to the next slide. I know that many of you are connected to the Alliance in one way or another, but many of you are not and may not be that familiar with our organization. The National Alliance of Children's Trust and Prevention Funds is the national membership organization for state children's trust and prevention funds, and we are about to celebrate our 30th anniversary. The Alliance is a hub for all elements in the prevention field, the thought leader in the movement to strengthen and promote the well-being of children, families, and communities, and we're a very strong partner with parents. True to our mission, we're committed to maintaining a strong network of children's trust funds that are capable of leading and investing in strategies, policies, and best practices to strengthen families and to help prevent child abuse and neglect before it ever occurs. On our website, you can find many resources related to protective factors, including 14 hours of free online training, information, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, information about becoming a certified trainer for our in-person 3-day training of trainers for bringing the protective factor framework to life in your work. You can also find parent-to-parent materials to help build protective factors that have been created by the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council. You can find research and training materials about how to prevent child neglect. These materials clearly show how the protective factors play an important role in preventing child neglect. And also, you can find information about training and technical assistance that the Alliance provides for those hoping to establish and enhance their work to partner with parents. In November, we will be hosting our annual meeting for Children's Trust Fund members in Washington, D.C., and we will be building a celebration into our time together, as well as making some follow-up announcements that may be of interest to all of you. So just stay tuned for that. And please feel free to contact me if you would like further information about what the Alliance can do to help support your important priorities in the coming year. And also, if you are at the PCA conference and you would like to know more about the Alliance, I will be there and our executive director will be there. And we will have a booth, so come by our booth and share a few minutes, and it would be great to see the faces of those of you who we do see on the calls every month. You can go to the next slide. I just want to provide a brief update about our 7 online courses, because these were launched in 2012 and a lot has changed since then, and we have learned a lot through the implementation processes that we've been involved in with a lot of our children's trust funds across the country. So we have undertaken a refreshing of these courses. The content is still basically the same, but we have worked on all the dead links that are in there, and updated the graphics and many other things, and moved them over to a new platform with Pro Solutions Training in Atlanta, Georgia. Right now, 5 of the courses are still on our original platform, and 2 of the courses are already on the new platform. I think the 3rd one will go up sometime in the next week. And let's move to the next slide, and I will share with you. When you go to our website, you will see this link will take you directly to the online training, and you need to scroll down until you see this 3-column piece. And in order to start a course, all you do is, in the far left column, click on the course that you want to begin. And you can see that by the name of the course, there is a designation whether it's on the new platform or on the original platform. And so don't let that confuse you. The new platform, we can go to the next slide, will show you some of the new options that are available. So all of the courses on the original Alliance platform are free, and there is a certificate of completion at the end of each course. Many states have embedded this training into their state systems, and they require that the users of the courses save those certificates and submit those for credit. And on the courses that are on the new Pro Solutions platform will also have that option of taking the courses for free with a certificate of completion. But in addition, there will be a small fee you can pay in order to receive CEUs or state child care credit. Pro Solutions Training has agreement with over 40 state child care professional development systems, and you can gain child care credit through that process. Once all the courses are up on the Pro Solutions platform, then we will apply for continuing ed hours with the National Association of Social Work, and that will also be, that's really hard to say, so those will be eventually available, and I think that will really expand our grasp. Just one note about the online courses. We had no idea in 2012, when we launched these courses, that they would be used by so many people, and we are very grateful that they are. We have reached our limit of, we have basically exceeded 30,000 people, and it's pretty humbling and awesome to know that this many people in every state in the United States, in more than 40 foreign countries, have been using this training. And so I hope you will go and check it out if you aren't familiar with it, and let me know if you have any questions or any other ways that I might be of help to you. Thank you, Kaylin.
Thank you, Martha. All right, great updates, lots going on the training side. And now we're going to hand off to our presenters, Phyllis and Jeff from the University of Oregon. I'm going to take a moment to just remind folks how the webinar platform works. So if you have questions that come up while the presentation is going on, you can type them in, and we will see them and be able to read them out loud to the presenters. You can also raise your hand if you would like to be unmuted, if you're in a good place to be unmuted and you want to ask a question. Typically, I'd ask you to wait for that until we ask whether there are questions, because we won't unmute you in the middle of their presentation unless it's a clarifying question, which is probably better to just type in. I'll also point out that there are handouts. If you look on the webinar panel on the side of your screen, there should be a tab that says handouts. You can expand that and see the handouts that Jeff and Phyllis have provided, as well as the slides from today, a PDF of the slides. So if you want to just download those right now, you can grab them from there, and we will refer to those as we go, so you'll know how they all relate, but you're able to get some additional information in that way. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Phyllis Barkhurst and Dr. Jeff Total from the University of Oregon, who are going to talk about their work there to prevent child abuse in their county. Phyllis and Jeff, are you ready for me to show your screen? Show your screen?
We are ready.
Okay. Here we go.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. This is our first webinar being on this side of the screen, and I'm usually sort of where you are, eating your lunch or etc. So this is exciting to imagine people out there listening to one county taking on child abuse prevention in a very different way. As Kaylin said, my name is Phyllis Barkhurst, and I'm the co-director with Jeff of the Center for the Prevention of Abuse and Neglect, and the director of 90 by 30, our largest initiative, which is what we're focusing a lot of our attention on today. But I spent 27 years as executive director of local nonprofits addressing child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault out in the field, and then worked as the director of a state sexual assault task force where we turned our attention to prevention. And in that time we saw there were so many amazing efforts going on around prevention that we wanted to bring to Oregon, and then specifically we wanted to bring to Lane County.
So hi, I'm Jeff Total, and with Phyllis, the co-director of the Center for the Prevention of Abuse and Neglect and the director of research. And thank you, Kaylin, for the invitation. We're really glad to be here and joining you today. And we hope that what we share with our work is useful for you and thought-provoking. And in Martha, we're among those 30,000. So we really have studied and tried to embed the protective factors in our work, and we found it to be super helpful here. So we're excited to share with you what we've been doing. Give us a moment.
And open our PowerPoint.
You should just be able to click or use your arrow key to advance the slide.
Activating. I thought I had it pulled up. Okay, thank you.
So as you can see on this screen, there's contact information for us as well as information on both of our websites, our 90by30.com, which describes this particular effort, and then connected to 90by30.com is a specific website to engage people, community members in child abuse prevention, so that they can go to that website to find a place and a role and ideas of what they can do just as community members to prevent child abuse and neglect. So let's start with talking a little bit about Lane County. So Lane County, Oregon, the size of our county is the same size as the state of Connecticut. So our county geographically is huge. About half of the land, however, is owned by the federal government, either BLM, Forest Service, etc. So our population is spread in pockets throughout Lane County, which is a particular challenge. You can see on the screen some of our demographic information. What we always like to point out, because we're a county where more people move in to retire than live births occur, we have a 5-to-1 ratio. We have 5 adults for every child in Lane County, which is why we really thought having an engaged community take on child abuse and neglect was very feasible within amount of adults to children. And you see a little bit of information about our reports in terms of Lane County has a little bit higher report rate of child abuse than our population affords, and we think that's because there's been so much work going on in Lane County and people are making reports more, not necessarily because we have more child abuse and neglect here.
So just a bit about some of our history and to give you some context. And beginnings are interesting things because this is born on the the hills of activism for decades, and about today I think marks the 25th year of the Violence Against Women's Act. So our work really is on the shoulders of all that. And so we did begin in February of 2011 with an open forum where it was essentially a kind of a thought activity where we invited 7 presenters representing different sectors of our community. A survivor was represented, the faith community, a superintendent, a leader of our local Latino community, and child welfare, and a couple of others. And they each had 10 minutes to address this prompt. We asked them, imagine that it's December 31st, 2030, and we've reduced child abuse and neglect by 90%. Not everywhere, just in one place, one county, Lane County, Oregon. And they each had 10 minutes to address that question. And we asked them to say, what did we do to achieve that, and what do we need to do right now? So that really got this initiative rolling. There was a tremendous amount of interest, and so we worked to build on that momentum. We spent a year then following that to develop an organizing committee. About 60 people worked together to identify the definition of child abuse and neglect. We made a decision as a group to include exposure and intimate partner violence in our definition. That felt important to include. We identified core beliefs. There was a conversation around where should this be housed, and was nearly unanimous. Folks thought it'd be useful to embed this at the University of Oregon. So then that launched the Center for the Prevention of Abuse and Neglect. So we think about this work as a grassroots effort embedded in or nested in a university. And as a part of that initial forum, we included organic farmers attended, retirees, youth of Juventud Peseta. So we've tried to be inclusive across this entire effort.
So we decided to start rural. We're a large county, and it's very typical in most counties that most of us have worked in. You start an effort in the urban area and then hope that some of that goes to the rural area. Because of the support of the Ford Family Foundation, which is Oregon's largest private foundation, we went the opposite way. We started and organized in all of our rural areas first before we moved to the metro areas, which made a huge difference in the communities in the rural areas who believe for the first time, many said, that they were being counted and that what happened in the rural areas was as important and needing as much attention. So as Jeff noted, in our year of organizing, we went around and spent quite a bit of time, and if any of you all have done community organizing, you know what it means if 60 people put together a list of core beliefs. And our full list of core beliefs are on our website, the90by30.com. But these are just some examples, but there were some that we felt were essential to moving forward, and starting with the belief that child abuse and neglect can be prevented. And so from our list, these are ones that people talk about perhaps the most, about the belief that children deserve to be safe and cared for, and it crosses all lines, and that there's a role for everyone, and that every voice is important and every perspective has something valuable. So these core beliefs are something we use in all of the meetings and trainings and conferences that we do to just remind ourselves and to constantly check in if we're working from our values.
We made a decision to really go with an aspirational goal. And the thinking there really was that it's important to envision it in order to achieve it, and that to think through what actually would it take to reduce child abuse by 90%. We also made the decision to scale this down into one U.S. county. Part of that motivation was to address the discouragement that a lot of us can feel around the kind of scope of this problem. It's a human rights issue, social justice issue, public health issue. And so if we think about trying to do something like this across an entire state, that can feel overwhelming for a lot of us. So we made a decision to scale it down to one U.S. county.
So our theory of change, which we could of course talk about all day, we wanted to encapsulate here in just a few pieces. But what was important to us, the most important thing to us, was that we all knew and learned and have come from the idea of government, nonprofit folks working together to take on child abuse. And we realized that if we could have nonprofited or governmented our way out of child abuse and prevented it ourselves from those roles, we would have done so. And we look at things that have made great social change, and they've all have in common that they're community led. So that was absolutely vital. So our whole philosophy is about being led by engaged communities, where individual communities make the decisions about what strategies around child abuse prevention they're implementing, and doing the implementing themselves while we provide that backbone. So we are a collective impact. Part of our framework is as a collective impact agency. We're public health, and we're also, when we found the Strengthening Families Protective Factor Framework from the Center for Study for Social Policy, it just rang all of the bells. It just fit exactly how we wanted to go and be engaged in our communities and create a framework that everyone could talk about and create that common understanding and common language. So when we're looking at these population level and community level social norms change, we wanted a language that we could all use. So for us, the language that we use when we're around the community is fostering the conditions for child abuse prevention, that kids are connected, families are supported, and community members take positive action. So we've already mentioned quite a bit of this, but I just wanted to show you how we divided up our county. Our county is divided into 7 regions, and those 7 regions have regional leadership teams, and those teams make decisions, and for every strategy they implement, they have a work group. So each team did an asset mapping process I'm going to talk about in a minute, but they decided what was the biggest need they had, where they wanted their strategies to be housed, whether it's school-based, community-based, et cetera. And then they wanted to figure out who to partner with. And each of these 7 regions has their own individual prevention plan, and they partner with the folks they feel they need to move forward. So it's very unique. So you all are very familiar with this, but our wonderful communications person came up with the icons that we use for the Strengthening Families Protective Factor Framework, and that we use across all of our 7 regions. So just very quickly, we came up with these 5 steps to success, and it's one of the handouts I think that you'll have, and you also have this on the slideshow. But we spent about a year organizing locally, and we stair-stepped each region. So we started one region, and 6 months later started the next, and 6 months later, et cetera. So it was a 5-year process. And then coming from a public health approach, we collected data. The community members themselves went out and did surveys one-on-one, face-to-face, to collect data and talk to people about what their concerns were around child abuse, healthy families, creating nurturing and healthy communities, so that when they decided to choose their strategies, they had the voice of community members at hand in this data. Also did an asset mapping process in each region. And so we identified risk and protective factors, and we did asset mapping to the protective factor framework. So people were asked through key informant interviews, focus groups, going and meeting with folks and doing Qualtrics surveys where they thought the biggest gaps were by those protective factors. So that when we came to the step 4 about finalizing the strategic plan, each region looked at where the gaps were largest and chose their strategies to implement first to meet the gaps. So the Strengthening Families Protective Factor Framework was the basis for identifying this and the basis for choosing strategies to move forward. And now we're on step 5 in all 7 of our regions, which is implementing the strategies and figuring out the evaluation and funding them into perpetuity. So I'm not going to read all of this. I just wanted you all to see, when we asked ourselves to make good decisions, what would each local region need to have at hand? And this is what we decided. We gave them demographic leveled from the census and other sources down to the community block level. So we could say, where do the kids live? Where are there no children? Where are more immigrant populations? Where are the Spanish-speaking populations? Where are the poorest populations? That was part of what they needed to know. And then the survey results, we had child abuse report information down to the community block level, and then understanding of the protective factor framework from Strengthening Families, the asset mapping, and then each team, when they looked at what strategies they were considering, they not only looked at definitions of the strategies, they looked at the research about why those strategies made the list. So these are just a partial list of our 18 strategies that they chose from. What I want to say is many of the strategies cover more than one protective factor. So we're going to talk about only 2 today, a little bit, Roots of Empathy and Welcome Baby Box, but each region decided what strategy fit their biggest need based on the asset mapping. So Welcome Our Neighbors, for instance, is similar to what used to be known as Welcome Wagon, where they go in person and welcome somebody. It's a 2-visit thing in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and they'll do a second visit if there's kids in the home to bring more information and connect them up to the community. So all of these have a different function, and each team decided what blend of strategies. Again, this isn't the whole list, but this is the list that includes those most chosen by our 7 regions.
And the full list, just a quick comment about this, we had 3 criteria to identify the full list. One was that the strategies were evidence-based, researcher-informed, or promising. Another was that they could be mapped to the protective factor. So the Welcome Baby box is mapped actually to 3 factors, but it's mapped to a social connection. Safe Families for Children is mapped to concrete support in times of need. And then we also thought it was important to identify strategies that people can do and can see themselves doing.
So we just want to focus on a few. The first one is the only strategy chosen by all 7 of our region, which is Roots of Empathy. And this is out of Canada. It's a school-based effort. And as I said, we're a public health approach. We're looking at 2 things: long-term upstream strategies that will have impact at a community level, and things that are universally applied. So to be a strategy for 90 by 30, it has to be something, for instance, if we choose Roots of Empathy and a region chooses it, it has to then be in all the schools. And we're not going to choose by SES, we're not going to choose by who has the most kids with free lunch. It's all universally applied. So Roots of Empathy out of Canada, and we want to show a short little video clip here to introduce it to you.
Okay, this is Kaylin. I'm going to play the video, and we're going to hope the technology is our friend. Is anyone seeing the video?
No.
No. Oh boy. I'm sorry this is not working the way that we practiced it. It did work in the practice. I think okay, let me try one more time. We may have better luck here. All right. I believe that worked.
Thank you.
Okay, we can hear you again too.
So we chose Roots of Empathy because of its 15 years of research that show the effectiveness, not in the short term, on creating a climate and culture of respect, better communication. It also takes on racism, homophobia, classism. It really helps kids to have a way to interrupt language and or bullying and other harassing behaviors. It gives them tools to do so. And they first learn how to develop empathy with the baby, then with each other, then within their homes and larger communities. So we are looking forward. We're in our 2nd year of implementing this. Eventually we'll be in all 150 first grade classrooms in Lane County. And we are also looking forward to partnering in the future with Roots of Empathy to do some research, some randomized clinical trials to look at specific metrics over a real like a 10-year or more period of time to see what helps people regain and maintain empathy throughout a lifespan.
And then we'll highlight just one other strategy. Again, this is among several that have been implemented in each of the regions. And the Welcome Baby Box, we think about that as a gift from the community. And so it's community members within their own parts of our county who are assembling a box. Technically, it's a safe sleep system born out of Finland's tradition. And it includes specific contents that families have identified are important and useful for them. It's delivered to the family, ideally just prior to the baby's birth. It includes a home visit with trained community volunteers. It includes the peer-to-public crime video, which we share with them as a part of the box. And one thing that we have found is that this particular strategy and Roots of Empathy has inspired really broad public interest. Part of what happens with these strategies is they have drawn lots of attention to the 90 by 30 initiative. People can see themselves participating. So it's really created a kind of momentum we didn't even quite anticipate.
So for instance, in each box, there's a tummy time quilt that a local community member has quilted for the baby. There is a knitted crocheted hat in each quilt, and all of them say, "Welcome baby," quilted by Barbara, "Welcome baby," crocheted by Maria, etc. But the whole idea of having each thing in the box either sponsored or brought to the baby by a community member. One of our smallest communities, the high school there, did a car wash fundraiser to buy the pacifiers for all the babies born in that community in that year to be part of the box. So it's creating a lot of connections. And the other thing that happens when the parents of new infants, if they want to be connected with other parents of new infants in their community, then we provide a mechanism to do that. This strategy is in English and in Spanish, and the home visits for immigrant populations or Spanish-speaking populations, because we have immigrant populations in Lane County that are Hmong speaking, not Spanish speaking. So the point is, whoever does the visits is bilingual, bicultural for the community from where the baby is born.
We have a video. Will that play, you think, Kaylin?
We are going to try. So we'll try not to lose too much time on this if it's not going to work, but I'm actually going to make Martha our presenter because she's going to try to show it on her screen.
Okay, let's give it a shot.
You know, we looked at many different strategies that we could consider implementing, and many of us have attended the 90 by 30 annual conference, where there have been amazing guest speakers from around the world, from Australia, from Europe, and so it's been inspiring to hear what other cultures and people have been doing and what's been successful. So we've looked at many strategies, and we've looked at the cost of implementing strategies and the bang for the buck. What can we do locally? How can we reach people, and how can we have it make a difference? Locally, there are about 250 babies born a year in just the South Lane area. So our Welcome Baby Box program, for the bang for the buck there, is we're going to be able to reach every family and every baby in the region after we've done some successful fundraising and make a huge impact. You know, get into the homes, network with the parents, help them gain access to services, and help these babies grow up to be wonderful people.
Absolutely. I think we were very careful in how we chose what we were going to do, because we wanted it to be friendly, welcoming, non-threatening. We wanted it to be a gift. We wanted to be able to be joyful with the families. And what better way than to come up with this incredible gift of the baby box, which is very successful in Europe. And for us to be able to bring it to our small South Lane community, it's incredible. And I know that we will be successful in the fundraising, and that this will happen to be able to bring the families to the community, to different places where they can come with their babies, their families, and to have the support of all the people in our community, all the agencies that are working together, Peace Out, the Relief Nursery, Family Resource Center, child care centers. Everybody is excited because it tells these families, you are important, no baby is important. And we are happy that you chose South Lanes as a place to be.
Thank you, Martha. That worked, and we thank you for the troubleshooting to get that video to play. We all appreciate it.
For sure.
Okay. So we'd like to we'll be brief about this, but I just want to give you a sense of something we launched this last April as a part of Child Abuse Prevention Month. It's really our first kind of more intentional public-facing social media community engagement effort. And it was really inspired by the National Association for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect in Australia. And we've named this initiative nomoreLaneCounty.org. We won't show the website right now, but if you want to take a moment even now as we're talking and poke around and you get a sense of what we're aiming to do there. One of our core assumptions that there's a role for everyone, that of course takes everyone. We landed on these three kind of cornerstone ideas, again, all mapped to the protective factors. And so this is, again, our kind of our first public-facing effort. So take a look at that. We'd love your feedback. We're sharing it with other communities, so we hope you find that useful. nomoreLaneCounty.org.
Just want to mention that we already mentioned we do an annual conference for Lane County folks that brings together around 300 people every year. So there's a touchstone through the year. We also organize in all of the regions and then countywide the Child Abuse Prevention Month efforts, which it provides an opportunity for all sorts of folks, whether they're Rotaries or the fire departments, to get involved in a different way. Like one of these pictures is of the businesses in one of our small towns that did pinwheels and painted pinwheels on the door and the glass doors and the glass windows of the businesses. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we spend a lot of time during the year on Child Abuse Prevention Month as an organizing and community engagement tool, as well as our annual conference.
And we'll take just a bit of time to talk about some of the data and evaluation, some of our surveys, and then the child abuse prevalence study. So, but just briefly about this. We have thought about the work we've done around data collection as an important part of community engagement. We spent time asking members of the Lane County community, do they believe child abuse and neglect is a problem? Can we reduce child abuse and neglect? Will we? What would they need to see to be in support of an effort? And as a part of that, we conducted more than 1,800 in-person community surveys. We mapped community assets, identified barriers to families. We conducted a random digit child abuse and prevention climate survey, and then connected with more than 12,000 Lane County residents at convenience stores, libraries, farmers markets, street fairs, and much more. Just to get a much better sense of how our community thinks about this issue and how would they be more likely to engage. And that has, we think, been probably the most important thing that we did, because we have found that we actually have a very engaged community around trying to reduce child abuse. And people think about this, I think, as our problem and our solution.
And one of the handouts you have is based on this random digit dial scientific survey we did, and Whatcom County, Washington, is our comparator county, who doesn't have a countywide effort going. So over time, we're comparing how we're doing to how Whatcom County is doing and changing attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs and activity around child abuse prevention. The other key part of our research and evaluation program is making sure every individual strategy has its own plan. For instance, Roots of Empathy came with its own evaluation plan, program evaluation plan, and it's up to us to implement it to fidelity. Welcome Baby Box doesn't have one, and our research and evaluation team, including many of our grad students, developed and tested and piloted the evaluation plan for the Welcome Baby Box, which will culminate in some focus group work with participant families. So each of our strategies, we either boost what comes with the strategy, come up with an evaluation plan of our own, or use an existing strategy's evaluation plan to fidelity. But what's important to us is that we not only measure outputs, like how many people are involved at every level of work, how many people come to the meetings, work groups, how many instructors do we have as volunteers in Roots of Empathy, how many people get involved in Child Abuse Prevention Month. We count all those outputs, but we're also measuring change over time to see if we're meeting our goals related to the protective factors. Are we increasing social connections? Are we having an impact on concrete support, etc.? So when we started thinking about our biggest goal of preventing child abuse 90% by the year 2030, we started to say, how are we going to know that? So to keep this a short version, we spent almost 2 years funded by foundations in Oregon looking to see how other states and places around the world were getting at prevalence rates for child abuse and neglect. And we found nothing that worked better than report rates. In other words, there was nothing out there that really got to the prevalence. So we decided to develop the Oregon Child Abuse Prevalence Study to not only focus on Lane County, but the whole state of Oregon, which we've piloted in Lane County and are working with the Oregon legislature and the CDC to get funding to take it statewide next year.
We won't be able to go into the details of all the efforts that were taken to ensure that doing this survey was supported for the youth participants, that they felt validated, that care was given around really the kind of the ethical considerations of doing something like this. But we'd be happy to talk with you if you have an interest at a later date. In short, this is 167 questions that go very specific into any kind of abuse or neglect that the participants may have experienced. Each of the types of abuse and neglect is within our definition. There's some questions around health and health outcomes and school and protective factors, so we'll be able to look at a whole number of questions at a later date. But we did a pilot in 5 Lane County school districts, 6 schools, 12 classrooms, and 216 students. They complete the questionnaire on an iPad. And we just wanted to share with you just a quick look into some of our data. And one thing to know is this isn't representative necessarily. It was more of a convenient sample for the pilot. We're planning to do a representative survey in Lane County and a neighboring county this academic year and then go statewide next year is our aim. And the participants are 16 to 18 years old or over. And so just a quick look in at the students who participated in the pilot. We asked about 11 questions about child sexual abuse. And you see there among the participants, those who reported at least one sexual assault experience, 14 experienced 3 or more types. We asked about physical abuse. These percentages pull out any kind of abuse or neglect that may have happened at the hands of a peer or a sibling. And so among participants, 52% of students report at least one type of physical abuse by an adult, 39% 4 or more types.
We included all of the ACE questions within the Oregon Child Abuse Prevalence Study, or OCAPS as we call it. We also included the Oregon BRFIS questions, which include some questions related to child abuse and neglect and sexual assault. And you can see in terms of the green line here being the OCAPS pilot, since each of our questions, we had for each of our types of questions, we had a cluster of questions to really get to the numbers that we're looking at. So when you look at ACE items, there's very few questions that they ask on the ACE questionnaire, and we just bolster that greatly to get at a better sense. But looking specifically at the ACE items, we show much higher disclosure through this survey than we've seen in any other ACE publication.
Our intention is to conduct this survey every 3 years.
So very quickly, we just wanted to, we always have supporting students and making sure students feel safe in the classroom and supported during and after the study is the top priority. It took a year to get through the human subjects review process at the University of Oregon to make sure we had this covered. And so this just gives you an idea of what the students on their iPad, they reflected this. Then we also do a debrief afterwards where they get to talk about their experience. And then they also, so we also get quotes from that debriefing.
Just a few additional quotes there.
One of my favorites is the one where the student said, "This survey does justice. And quite a few students talked about, such as do as much as you can with the information, do what you can as much as you can. And several of them said, we want this information to be made useful. When we went and spoke in front of our legislature, because we do have a bill that came up last year that didn't get funded, but it's going to be reintroduced in February once again for funding for this. What impacted the legislature the most was the students really challenging them to do something with the information from the voices of youth who have experienced trauma.
We think about this too as really a youth engagement, youth empowerment effort, and we're hopeful that members of our community will, even as they get a better sense of the rates of abuse and neglect for youth in our community, if we pair that awareness with specific strategies, we're hopeful that together that will mobilize many more participants. And just one last comment about this. You notice there at the very last line, 47% of participants had never disclosed or talked with anyone about the abuse or neglect they experienced. And speaks to the culture of silence and the norm. That's one of the norms, obviously, we're working to change in our community.
And as Jeff said, we're more than happy to talk to people about this study. This wasn't able to give it justice, but there's a lot of handouts online, and there's references to them in the handouts that you have available to you, full reports from our pilot, etc. So we'd always like to start and/or end with this slide, because we're focusing a lot on child abuse and neglect, but we realize that we are part of a much larger community. And we like a lot of the language used by the CDC and their Essentials for Childhood program. But we're part of creating safe, healthy, and nurturing communities so that children have a place wherever they go, which turns into families, which turns into communities being safe, healthy, and nurtured. So we focus a lot on child abuse and neglect and its prevention, but we feel like we're part of the bigger picture, which enables us to find the partners we need to implement within a context. And so on to...
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. We've had a couple questions typed in already, so I will encourage folks to type in any further questions they have, and I will read some of the questions that came in so far. There was a comment I'll start with. Marilyn Gitzer wrote, "This is fabulous work and presented well. I'm impressed that you've been able to sustain this work for so long. Thanks for a great presentation."
Thank you.
So always nice to just start with the lovely thank you. A couple of more specific questions. Kate Bullock asks, what is the No More initiative in Australia? You mentioned referring to that title.
Yeah, well, No More is the language that we took on. So NAPCAN was, Phyllis mentioned at our conference, so we brought NAPCAN here about 4, maybe 5 years ago now. And they presented their work, and they had some wonderful social media efforts. They called it something different. We weren't able to call it that because of copyright here.
They called it Play Your Part.
Play Your Part, which we liked a lot. But we, with their permission, borrowed many of their ideas, and we landed on No More. And then we also landed on our subtitle is A Connected Child is a Protected Child.
If you get the chance to get to NAPCAN's website, they have amazing things there. And they have a video called Children See, Children Do, a clip that they have that has been proven to be very powerful for just like a 90-second clip on showing how kids mimic the behaviors that they learn at home.
I encourage you to take a look, peruse the No More website. I hope you find that useful and think about ways you might borrow that for your own community.
All right, thank you. Then we have a question from Jody Spicer about the BRFIS ACEs questions. So she says the CDC ACEs module does not include questions about neglect. Did you add questions to get at neglect? Yeah,
we actually have 39 neglect questions. Neglect's hard to measure. We're using one of the measures is the multidimensional neglectful behavior scale. We're now looking at revising the measure as we go to the next phase. We'll probably reduce some of the neglect questions, which will give us more room to add a few more protective factor questions. So we're weighing that right now, actually.
All right, thank you. Another pretty straightforward question: who pays for the Welcome Baby Box? Where do those resources come from?
So the Welcome Baby Box, we have a small grant from a foundation to pay for some staff time. but mostly it's paid for by community sponsors. One of the largest hospitals buys the box and the mattresses and the sheets, and then in each region they're responsible to raise the money to get each item in the box sponsored. So it varies. Some groups do fundraisers, some groups like the Rotary will just sponsor for a year buying the books in the box. We chose the baby box as a way to not only a safe sleep system, a way to get to shaken baby syndrome prevention, but also as a way to get people involved that aren't normally involved, banks, businesses, who then will sponsor. Dentists will donate toothbrushes for, if there's other kids in the family, they'll donate and make sure the box includes toothbrushes for kids based on the ages of the kids. So there's something in the box also for other children. So a little bit of staff time, which is foundation supported, but mostly by local groups who sponsor specific items for the box.
Wonderful. Thank you. We've got a question from Jim McKay asking, you mentioned the CDC's Essentials for Childhood, and he's asking whether you are working also on policies like housing, economic security, paid leave, and those things that CDC does include as key factors for prevention.
Yes, yes. One reason I showed that that at the end, that slide, is because we work in concert with a whole bunch of statewide groups as well as local groups on those issues, and wherever they take the lead on issues that aren't related to child abuse and neglect, we support those issues, whether it's housing, food security, etc. So we partner with them in their efforts in very specific ways at the local level. For instance, the Safe Families for Children is a faith-based effort that provides respite for kids when parents need to be able to move somewhere else and get settled, etc. And in that situation, we work with the food security folks and transportation folks and other folks to make sure, including behavioral health, to make sure that that family has what it needs as it's going through a time of crisis, and with the goal of keeping them out of the child welfare system so that we have the child welfare system for families who actually need to be in there. So we partner with all of those groups, and we go and testify at the legislature, and we join in as we can, and then we take the lead in our own work. But we feel like we're a key part of the puzzle, and we focus mostly on our part of the puzzle, but then we collaborate with those other folks as well. We all need to do that to make it work.
We've worked to, again, thinking about the protective factors. Safe Families for Children, we map to concrete support in times of need and also support social connection. But we introduced that just a few years ago also at our conference, and it's now, there was a lot of interest. It's taken off all over our county, and now the state has made a decision to provide state dollars to support it too, so we're encouraged about its likely sustainability.
Great, thank you. We actually have more questions than we're going to be able to get to because we are running out of time here, so I may just forward you some of those questions and we can send out an email to folks who participated in the webinar. One last one I will ask is a specific question from Susan Ferdinandi asking, do you accept invitations to speak with and present to other county child abuse prevention councils and collaboratives working to strengthen families and communities? So kind of a how do we contact you question.
So on the screen is our contact information. We do. So we sort of pick and choose depending on our schedules, and if we can combine if we go out nationally or regionally, we try to combine a visit there with connecting and collaborating with other people in the area. And we do charge, so that's something for people to know as well. It helps pay for the 90 by 30 work that we do. So we have done it, we do continue to do it, so please, yes, ask us.
Great, I think that's a good note to end on. We had other questions, I'm sorry we didn't get to them all. But I think this was great content, got a lot of people thinking about things they could do in their own communities. And I'll say one of the things I really appreciate about 90 by 30 is that while it's a large comprehensive initiative, there are pieces within it that people could implement on a smaller scale as they get started, or they could be inspired by your audacious goal and do something similar at scale in their own community. So thank you very much for presenting for us and for all the great work you're doing. Thanks to Martha Reeder for sharing updates and for making that one video work that was just not cooperating with me. And thanks everyone for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will talk again soon.